Very much. Joining us now, Michael Oren. He's a former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Ambassador, thanks so much for joining us. It was good to always see you in Washington. It's nice to see you here in Tel Aviv, although I wish we were meeting under different circumstances.
Thank you. Well, good to be with you nevertheless.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what's going on right now. The Israeli defense minister earlier today, and you probably saw the news conference, he said that the Israeli assault on Hamas in Gaza that's ongoing right now, he says, will help hostage negotiations. Do you agree?
I do, and I explain the logic of it because there was a certain theory that by starting the ground operations, we were basically forfeiting the ability to negotiate for the hostages. I think it's just the opposite. Long as Hamas was sitting underground with the hostages and we weren't on the ground attacking, then Hamas could determine the conditions, and the conditions were far, far more than Israel could ever accept. It was not just releasing all the terrorists in Israeli jails, and these are people who have killed hundreds, in the case of the Second Intifada, killed 1,000 Israelis, okay? So with a lot of blood on their hands. The Hamas also wanted unlimited fuel supplies for its fighters, and it wanted a ceasefire. Now, you understand, a ceasefire for Israel is death. Ceasefire means that Hamas gets away with mass murder. It means we can't restore our security. We can't restore our deterrence power in the region. We're finished. So we couldn't accept that. But as the Israeli forces move into Gaza slowly and encircle Hamas, Hamas is going to have to use those hostages as sort of a get-out-of-jail-free card. They could pull what, you remember this, what Yasser Arafat did in Beirut in 1982. They'll say, okay, let us get out of here. We'll go to Algeria or something, and we'll give you the hostages. It also, I think, increases the chances that they'll keep the hostages alive and in good shape, because that's their last bargaining chip.
Is it possible that Israel might accept some sort of pause, not a ceasefire, but a pause to allow more humanitarian aid to get in to help those civilians in Gaza?
I think it's possible. It's very difficult politically here, and I'll explain why. While we don't want to see Palestinians suffer, it's important to move them out of the combat zone as much as possible, because if they're in the combat zone, the amount of Palestinian civilian casualties will shoot very, very high up. On the other hand, many Israelis, especially the families of these 222 Israelis who are held hostages, are saying, why should we give food and fuel to the Palestinians when they won't even let us know who they have as hostages? They won't let the Red Cross in to see them. And by opening up those corridors, we're basically giving up the last leverage we have to find out about our loved ones. So very difficult calls for the Israeli government. I'm not representing the government now, Wolf, and I would say in the long run it's in Israel's benefit, because if you don't have that type of humanitarian corridor, you're going to have increasing international pressure on us for a ceasefire, which would, as I said before, would be disastrous for us. But politically, it's a heavy lift here.
To go ahead and delay any full-scale ground invasion? Is that
no, but I'm talking about the humanitarian corridor.
To stop that.
You have to answer to the families. I'm meeting with these families every day, and they all say the same thing.
The Israeli hostages, more than 200
yes.
who are in Gaza.
222 are in Gaza. Yeah. And they all say the same thing to me. Whatever you do, don't agree to this humanitarian corridor. As much pressure as you're under by the United States, by the international community, because it's the last leverage we have to find out the status of our loved ones. Many of them don't even know if there weren't some video clip taken of the hostages. They don't really know that they're there. They just know that they're missing, and only a minority were filmed. So most of the people I'm meeting with don't even know if their loved ones are there in fact.
As you know, if the Israeli aerial and ground assault intensifies right now, as it clearly is, there's going to be a lot more civilian deaths in Gaza. Is Israel prepared for the international outcry that almost certainly will develop?
I think Israel's prepared, but we're also prepared for something that is very much close to home, or for Israeli deaths. Understand, we're sending our kids into combat here, with the knowledge that there will be a certain number who won't come home. And that is why Israel's adopting an interesting military strategy, one we haven't used before. They're actually calling it the American strategy, which is you target a certain neighborhood or a village. You bomb that village to clear it out the best you can. You move forces in there, and then you establish that village as a bridgehead to the next village or to the next neighborhood. So it's not a mass of soldiers moving in as we did in 2014. You remember, we moved the army all at one time. We suffered a tremendous amount of casualties. So Israel's going to try to do this as cautiously as possible and slowly close that cordon and close the noose, if you will, around Hamas, also giving more Palestinian civilians more time to flee to the south.
as you heard the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu say today a few times, this is Israel's second independence war. The first was in 1948 when Israel was established. But this is a war for Israel's existence. He keeps saying that right now. Do you agree?
I think just about everybody out there would agree with him. They might not like the Prime Minister, but definitely agree with him with that, because it is. If we don't win, when I mean win, if we don't uproot Hamas, if we don't decisively defeat Hamas, we can't live here. People will not be able to return to the South. The South is 62% of the country. Will people live in Tel Aviv, even knowing that tomorrow Hamas or Hezbollah in the north could do the same thing to us without deterrence? And we live in a very, very tough neighborhood. And if people don't fear us, they'll attack us.
Well, you and I are sitting in Tel Aviv right now, clearly within range of Hamas missiles and rockets coming in from Gaza, but certainly within range of Hezbollah rockets and missiles coming in from South Lebanon into Israel. Are you afraid that this war could widen to not only include Israel and Hamas, but others, Hezbollah, others in the region?
Including Shiite militias in Iraq and Houthi rebels in Yemen, who fired several missiles at us the other night. Unfortunately, the USS Carney took them down, so thanks to the USS Navy. Yeah, of course. And we have a tremendous amount of forces in the north prepared to deal with the Hezbollah contingency. There's a certain debate going on here. I've been part of that debate, whether Israel should have attacked Hezbollah first. Hezbollah has 15 times as many rockets as Hamas has, and they're bigger rockets. They're more accurate rockets. They have a terrorist force that has been massacring Syrians for the last 10 years. Very, very dangerous. And they're the same people. They do the same thing to our people in the north what the Hamas did to our people in the south. It is determined now that Israel's going to deal with Hamas first, and the way we're dealing with, hopefully, stage by stage, not a massive onslaught. That American plan, maybe that will lessen the pressure on Hezbollah to intervene. That is the hope. Nothing's guaranteed here.
You were Israel's ambassador to the United States for a few years, so you understand Washington. How much pressure is Israel feeling from the Biden administration right now to calm things down?
I don't think it's pressure. I think it's more like advice. And I know pressure. I know when to feel it. I think that the United States has made the President of the United States, first of all, in his speech here, which everyone was watching here and crying. You got to understand, there was nothing like it, the way he connected his personal pain with our pain, the unequivocal support for Israel's right to defend itself. And he's still doing that. And he's maybe paying a political price for it within his own party. It's just extraordinary. But what he did, which I never would have thought he did, I went beyond what I would have expected, was he actually moved huge naval forces into this area, 2 carrier strike forces. It's a massive naval armada at a time when, as you know, in Washington, but almost the only bipartisan issue is isolationism, is not getting involved in a war, really not in the Middle East. And people are shooting at the Americans.
So
people are shooting at Americans in Iraq and Syria.
Not only to include Hezbollah, Iranian-backed, but potentially, God forbid, even Iran?
That's certainly. Well, who are firing at American bases in Iraq and Syria right now are Iranian-backed militias. And they're clearly getting a green light, and they're also getting their ammunitions from Iran. And the United States has fired back now at some of these positions. But I think when the administration and Joe Biden says to Iran and to Hezbollah, don't, that one word, I think he means it.
What do you think he means?
I think he means don't try us.
And if they do, what is he going to do?
Well, I think in the first stage, and this is purely speculation, Hezbollah has 150,000 rockets, I mentioned earlier. That would overwhelm.
150,000 rockets. Potentially they could reach not just Haifa in northern Israel,
a lot,
but all the way down to really?
Yes, a lot. And
further south than Tel Aviv.
But the range is not the problem. The range is the accuracy. They have guided rockets. The stuff that you see firing at us, that you saw on your screen, are what's called stand-up rockets. They go up, they go down.
These are the ones that come from Hamas and Gaza.
Yeah, they go up and they go down, and the Iron Dome meets them
here.
The
Iron Dome intercepts those rockets.
Right, but what if you have a rocket that goes like this, that's being guided by a joystick? That's a whole different level of threat. Now, the United States and Israel have developed a system called David Sling, which can take out a cruise missile. But it hasn't been tried that often in combat, and every interceptor costs about $1 million. So it's a pricey system. And I think with 150,000 rockets would overwhelm pretty much any system we can put above us. So we need the systems aboard the carrier groups. Now, they have a number of very advanced anti-missile systems. They have the THAAD, they have the Aegis, and they have the Patriot. And we would call them. So the United States would use those systems. The big question I think that you're asking me is, would then Iran or these pro-Iranian militias, would they take a shot at one of America's ships, or would they escalate the fire at American bases in Iraq and Syria? And if that happens, I wouldn't push Joe Biden too far.
Because you keep mentioning those 2 U.S. aircraft carrier battle groups that are now not far from where we're sitting right now in the Eastern Mediterranean,
The fourth and the
right
Eisenhower.
over there.
Yeah.
What do you think their mission is?
I think their mission is to deter. I think
To
they're there
deter Iran and Hezbollah.
And Hezbollah. They understand that this is not just 2 carriers with a capacity of about 150 warplanes. It's huge. It's the size of an air force. But it's destroyers, it's frigates, probably some submarines. You're talking about some of the biggest naval forces on the planet have been moved here by the President of the United States, and we're very appreciative of it. But and the big question, I get involved with Israelis asking, will Joe Biden pull the trigger? Will he pull the trigger? And I believe very deeply that he will if he's pushed into it. And that takes a lot of guts, giving that bipartisan opposition to foreign entanglement.
Ambassador, thanks so much for joining us.
Always good to
Ambassador
be with you.
Michael Oren is the former Israeli ambassador to the United States. We're going to have much more coming up from here in